Producer engineer Mark Howard says Joni Mitchell is a brilliant, sweet old lady who could talk for hours, and he loved it. You've touched on something with Joni Mitchell where I remember talking to Chris Bodie. I was introducing him on stage, and I'd interviewed him that day. And you worked with Sting, and I said, "Well, what was it like?" I said, "I bet you when you worked with Joni Mitchell," I said, "I bet you she was describing everything artistically." I said, "Listen, pardon my ignorance. I was never there. I've never been in the room with the lady, but she just talks like a painter all the time." And he says, and then he went on, and you've touched on that. Well, what was your experience like with Joni?
Well, I met her originally on a Brian Blade had a jazz record, and he invited her into the studio to sing on one of the tracks. So I kind of knew her from that record. And then who's that guy from Canada got arrested? The interviewer guy, John
Gameshi,
Giametti. Yeah,
Guion Gameshi,
yeah. So
or Gion, or I forget.
yeah, yeah. So he had gotten an interview with her, and I got a phone call from the producer of doing that show, and he said, "We want to have an all Canadian crew. Would you come in and record her?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And so when I went to do that, we did it at her house. She doesn't like to leave her house. So I said, "Hey, Joni, you remember? Oh yeah, I want you to do some stuff with me." And it's like I said, "Okay." And so that was kind of the invitation to kind of coming up to her house and recording. She had her very first record, Seagulls, or I can't remember what it's called, Songs for a Seagull or something like that. And so she goes, David Crosby had produced my first record, and she goes, "As I say, he misproduced my record." And so all of her first kind of four records were just really just her acoustic guitar and voice. And so, but on that first record, Cosby made her double her guitar parts. So there was two guitars, and she never liked that. She always wanted to be pure, and so she said, "Will you remix that record for me?" I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I had to find the masters, which was a job in itself, going around, and luckily found some guy that was doing transfers for Cosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So her first record was done in the middle of one of their records, so all of her takes are on the same reels that Cosby, Stills, and Nash is on. And so I went to Santa Monica and picked them up from this guy. And so all the tapes were what's called shedding, because they're so old. You have to have them baked.
Baked, yeah. Hey, I've got it. I've got a Studer right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Look at that.
STA 80, I think it's called.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all the old tapes needed to be baked, but there was a 4-track what was done on asphalt or some kind of different kind of like more like a film type stuff that didn't need to be baked, but the other stuff did. So once I did that, I transferred it to this machine I got over here called a Radar, and it's a Canadian digital, like a tape recorder. It's like a 24-track tape recorder. So I had that on. It's portable. I can go anywhere in the world. And so I went up to her house and I started mixing it, and I'd give her the mixes, and she would go into her bedroom and she would listen to the mixes off the TV, off her TV, and she goes, "It sounds better off the Dolby system than it does on the surround system." And I'm like, "Oh, that's your reference? Oh my God!" And so it was kind of crazy to have her, listening off of her TV. Maybe it's a good reference, but so yeah.
Well,
So once,
10cc, quickly, you probably heard the story, 10cc, I'm Not in Love.
yeah.
To make sure it sounded good, they actually played it through a transistor radio.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
well, they had that at Grand Avenue where they had a FM transmitter, and you go out into your car and you could tune it to that channel, and you could listen to your mixes in the car, which was a pretty cool idea, because that's, a lot of people listen in their car. But yeah, but Joni considers herself as an artist more than a musician, and so she's got beautiful paintings on her wall. So if she's in my book, you'll see some of those paintings hanging on our wall, and so yeah, so she is just, like I'm working with her and Brian Blade, and she's just chain smoking. And so we do a take, and then she just starts talking. And I look at the watch, and she's been talking for an hour nonstop. You can't get a word in. She's going on about, Larry, he took all my records. I don't have any records. I'm like, oh my God. And so she's a sweetest old lady. And I couldn't believe, because she's old and she's a bit fragile, but she was living in that house by herself up there in Bel Air. And I always thought, yeah, the maid come in, but there was nobody else there to kind of take care of her. And I thought, what happens if she tripped on her dog, and what would happen? So she had that brain aneurysm, and then boom, like, so I'd finished mixing that thing, and she had that aneurysm, and then I never heard from her for a while after that. But she recovered. And it's weird that Neil had the same brain aneurysm, right after before we made that record. It was kind of crazy that they both had it.
She had mentioned that I remember that she said that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young kind of abandoned her, she says, when she got to LA.
Yeah, there was a feeling of abandonment because she just felt she was very alone. And so she was just trying to, she was young and just comes, they invited her there, and then she maybe felt a little bit out of their circle or something like that.
How they react? Sorry, I got to interrupt here, because you mentioned them. How do they react to your success? I mean, your success, like, this is, I know it's you, but every artist, you're a fan too, and everyone has a little bit of, it's just little old me. But how did your family react to everything you've done?
It's funny because it's they didn't really react. My dad was like, I think he was proud, but like in the beginning, I was working this club on Lock Street, and it was a punk rock night, and I didn't know that. And I said, come down and see what I do, Dad. And so he shows up, and it's punk rock night, and the guy's on stage and cutting his stuff with beer balls. And my dad sees him in the toilet and says, what are you doing that from, mate? You're mad, and all this stuff. And so he goes, I don't think this is the right career for you. You need to get a proper job, like become a welder, something that you can lay back on. And then years later, he's got, Grammy things hanging on his walls and stuff like that. But I think, I think they do. My dad was like a champion boxer from England. And so he's what is it called? Welterweight or something like that. And so he's got trophies, and he was like the top guy there as a boxer. And so his family, he was always like the star of the family, and so there was a lot of like praise to that. But when I kind of did my thing, that's nice, well, you want to come to see the hit Tragically Hip or whatever? Okay, yeah. It's like, that's nice. It's just like they would never give me any like props or treat me any different. I'm just like the youngest of the family, and oh, well, you did well, that's nice. Yeah.
How common that is? How often in 40 years of interviews, those are all autographed albums, nothing compared to what you've done. But I'll tell you, through talking to people, I'd say half the artists I talk to, and it's kind of sad to me, they'll say, well, my brothers never said anything about Mike, never asked me a question, or it's just a weird thing of going, yeah, but it's kind of I know you don't think you're better than them, but it's kind of a big deal. It's
you're looking for the attention of that, but they won't give it to you. It's like, you're just still my little brother, and whatever. It's like my sister, like put out, well, that's a good book. Yeah, it's okay. Like just it's just a book.
Well,
just whatever.
Links to both of Mark Howard's books are in the description where you can pick them up. One is the storybook, basically telling the stories about working with all the greats: Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, Tom Waits, Tragically Hip, and so many more. So we'll have links to both books. Like I said, the first one's the storybook. The second one is basically the pictures book. We've showed you some pictures in the videos. Links to that and a lot more. If you want to help the channel, there are links. Subscribe. Check out our podcast. It's a fairly new podcast. It's doing really, really well, and you can hear a lot of our full interviews on our podcast. Share our videos and podcasts, and like, comment. We'd appreciate that. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.